Hey everyone at Dance Marathon. We're so excited that you're here today to help raise money for our favorite hospital, Arkansas Children's Hospital and Arkansas Children's Hospital Northwest. These hospitals have been in our network since 2009 when my son right here, Grady Welch, was first admitted. Grady was 2 years old when he first went down to Arkansas Children's, and he went in there because he started having seizures out of nowhere. We had no clue what had happened. He just woke up one morning having seizures. We were referred there by our local primary care doctor who said there's really nothing up here we could do, so she referred us down to Little Rock. And we live in Northwest Arkansas, so it was really scary for us because Northwest Arkansas has some really great hospitals, and for them to say that they couldn't take care of him here meant that there must have been a really big issue. And so we were sent down there to go see the neurologist, and while we were waiting for the neurologist to come in to see us in an office visit, Grady started seizing. They immediately whisked him into a room, had a team full of doctors that showed up, and told us they were going to admit him and do a 24-hour EEG. During that 24-hour EEG, they also did an MRI, did lots of tests to try to determine what had happened to him and why he just all of a sudden started having seizures. When we were doing the 24-hour EEG, I remember that he was not having any seizures, and I remember just praying, hoping that he would have at least one seizure so the doctors could see what we were seeing at home. About the 23rd hour of the 24-hour EEG, Grady finally had a seizure. When the doctor came in, I was so thankful, and I told him, I said, I'm just so excited you got to see one, so you could see what we're going through. And he said, to be honest, he said, we saw seizure activity the entire time that he was hooked up. He goes, we don't know why this just now started. We don't know how he can do the things that he can do, because he could walk and say some words. He said, but we're going to figure this out. He said, and we still don't even know what he has. So they sent us home saying we needed to get full PT, physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, because they ultimately had no clue what was going on with our son. So we went home, we started doing what they call trying to determine the right concoction, the right cocktail of medications that would actually help Grady with the seizures. With seizures, you can get the right cocktail and you kind of get a honeymoon phase, and then all of a sudden they'll start back again. So we went through that, and we fought with trying to get his seizures under control. And then this was in November of 2009. In March of 2010, we were having a lot more issues where Grady was starting to have some really high fever spikes. He was starting to just have some more uncontrollable seizures and breathing issues. And one night about 1 a.m. this happened. Tried to give him a lukewarm bath, give him Tylenol, give him Motrin to get his fever down, and nothing was working. So I ended up taking him into the ER, and that was his first airlift down to Arkansas Children's. I remember thinking how scary it was that my baby must be really sick if they're going to have to airlift him down to Little Rock. When we got down there, they ran some more tests, and they found out, we did a swallow study, which is where they let you eat different kinds of foods to determine if you're actually swallowing correctly. They start with very thin things to see like what your consistency is. So we went with something as thin as water, and what we learned was that everything was going straight to Grady's lungs. They did water, they did like applesauce, they did pudding, and then they even did an Oreo cookie, and the Oreo cookie went straight to his lungs. Right after that, they immediately said no more food by mouth. It was one of the really scary and sad things at the same time because Grady loved to eat. He enjoyed eating like so much that he would close his eyes and moan that it was so exciting and so like purposeful to him. And so then to tell to know that you can never give your child any more food by mouth, it was heartbreaking. They immediately put a feeding tube up Grady's nose so they could schedule him for surgery to get a G tube, which is one that goes straight into his stomach. A few days later, he got his G tube. We learned how to do tube feedings, and we left. We thought that this was going to be the save all, no more fevers, and no more of this breathing issue, and unfortunately it wasn't the case. We learned about a month later that he was still having all these issues and that he had a really bad reflux issue. What that reflux did was it was taking everything that was going into his G tube and it was refluxing back up into his lungs. So we went back in and got what's called a GJ tube, which means that there was a tube that went bypassed his stomach, went down into his small intestines, so that if he refluxed, it would only go back into his stomach and not into his lungs. Once we determined that this was actually working for him, they ended up going back in and doing what's called a Nissen, which puts like a knot at the top of your stomach so you cannot reflux out. All of these things just to help a little kid to be able to get some substance and nutrients. When Grady first started having seizures, he was 2, so this was about 4 years old. Grady has had multiple surgeries. He had, like I said, he had not only the feeding tube, he had his tonsils out, his adenoids out, he had the Nissen surgery. He also had what was called a vagal nerve stimulator put in. A vagal nerve stimulator is like a pacemaker for seizures, and it goes right here, and it attaches to your vagal nerve, and it pretty much just gives consistent jolts to your vagal nerve to be able to send those impulses to not have a seizure. If you have a seizure, you just take a magnet, swipe it across, and it gives an extra jolt to help stop that seizure and get you back in to where your impulses are correct and it stops the seizure. Grady had to have one of those because his seizures were not controlled just by medication alone. He was also on the ketogenic diet, which is a diet that many of you heard of, but it also helps for seizure controls too. So we tried everything to help Grady have really good seizure control. During all this time, other things in Grady started to fail. His breathing became a lot more strenuous and hard for him, so we ended up having to put a trach in him. The trach, what it did was it opened up a hole here in his airway so that he could be able to breathe out of here versus it going up into your mouth and nose. He had a floppy airway, so it flopped over, so it was hard for him to breathe. This created a lot of things at home. We ended up having pretty much our own hospital at home. We had oxygen, we had suction catheters, we had our feeding tube, we had CPAP machine, we had a cough assist machine. We had anything we could do to help Grady clear out his lungs so that he could be able to breathe better. Grady, we did this every day. Our schedule was very consistent. We woke up at 6, did meds. By 7, we were breathing treatment. By 9, we were feeding. By 10, we were doing more meds. By 12, we were doing some more feeds. By 1, we were doing more meds. By 3, another feed. By 4:30, more meds. By 6, more meds. Until he went to bed at 8 when he was fed overnight, and again more meds at 9. You had to be very structured with Grady's schedule because that was what was able to help him. Arkansas Children's helped us throughout this entire process with Grady, and I'm so entirely grateful to them. Unfortunately, Grady passed away on Mother's Day of, it was May 13th of 2018, so it's coming up on 2 years. Love that little boy more than anything in the world. He was amazing. His little smile, his little laugh, and he gave the best hugs in the world. I am so thankful that I got 10 years with my son. If you look up lissencephaly, when he was first given the diagnosis, it said he had 5 years. He lived for 10 years, and that was due to Arkansas Children's and the wonderful staff there. We cannot thank them enough for everything that they did. They gave us so many wonderful memories, so many things to be thankful for. And I just really, really hope and pray that you realize how important they are as well. You will never know the impact till you're actually there and you're spending time with your child and seeing the ways that they not only help your children, but they help you as a parent as well. We love our pediatric ICU unit up there. They're amazing. We love the nurses, the doctors, the staff, including all of our therapists, all of our specialty doctors. They became our family. And when Grady passed away, we don't get to see our family every day, and it does hurt. Not only does it hurt that we lost Grady, but we don't get to be in Little Rock, and there's so many wonderful people down there, as well as up here in Northwest Arkansas. So please give from your heart. Know that every day they are saving lives. They're saving families, and we want you to help them to save more of this. So please help today, and please remember you're doing it for all of the Gradys in the world, all of those kids who needed somebody to help give them an extra special chance. Thanks.